everyone, welcome back to our channel,
Atma Occult, where we compile useful information from classical occult traditions to help you get more out of life.
Today we have some really awesome tips for anyone who has strong Aries energy in their life.
This is going to count for someone who has Aries as their ascendant sign, their moon sign, or the sign where their sun is placed in their birth chart, or they have a cluster of planets in Aries. So just as a quick overview, Aries is a fire sign along with the signs of Leo and Sagittarius. It's the first sign of the original zodiac, so in the original birth chart, it's the first house, so it comes with the first house energy. It's a movable sign, so along with Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, it's one of the movable signs. It's ruled by the planet Mars.
Yes. So that means a lot of whatever Mars represents as a planet is going to have a lot to do with the sign of Aries as well.
Yes, Mars is going to give, it's just like we talked about with Libra. Venus rules the sign of Libra, so all the significations of Venus come into the Libra sign, and people who have Libra sign activated in their chart. When someone has Aries activated in their chart, all the significations of Mars are going to play into their life in a certain way.
Yes, and that's of course for the better or the
for the worse.
For the worse. Every sign has its pros and cons. So,
Yep.
So with Aries being the original first house and has a lot of that first house energy, a lot of that Mars energy, I think one thing that is very true about Aries people in general is they're very, very confident.
They can be confident. It can manifest as genuine confidence or like overconfidence compensating.
Yeah. So in a slightly negative, again, like if you have a lot of malefic influence on the sign of Aries, this could manifest as a little bit more ego or aggression,
violence,
yes,
impulsive violence,
or overconfident. But regardless, there's definitely confidence that is just kind of innate in an Aries individual.
And one of the reasons for that is Aries is the natural exaltation sign of the sun. And so it doesn't matter whether or not you have the sun placed in Aries in your birth chart. If Aries is activated, because Aries is the place where the sun loves to be comfortable, the sun in Vedic astrology represents confidence. All confidence comes from the sun. So Aries is connected to confidence in that way.
This confidence generally will make Aries people to be natural-born leaders. They certainly like to be in leadership positions. They like to be at the forefront or pioneers, maybe the first to do something. And this is obviously, you know, a skill that many people that have been very instrumental in inventions or creating something new,
being the first.
So any if you think of anyone that was the first to do something, they probably have some sort of Aries energy, or at least at the time that they accomplished that, their Aries was very activated.
They could have been running a time period of a planet placed in Aries or of a sign of Aries in a sign Dasha, which can temporarily activate the sign in a person's life. So maybe for this 10 years they get that energy activated. But what's interesting about Aries with leadership is being the first house of the birth chart. A lot of writing about Aries says that Aries can be very selfish, and it can. But one of the things you'll notice if you watch any movies or hear anyone talk about leadership or being in charge or being the leader of something, a lot of times they'll say, oh, it's alone at the top, or it's lonely at the top. And it's like the Aries energy is really comfortable kind of being alone or being that one unit, and they might have a lot of people following them, or they might be inspiring a lot of people, but they're okay with that loneliness at the top kind of experience. They kind of, that individuality where they're doing their thing, and a lot of people might be chasing after them doing their thing, but they're really comfortable doing their own thing all the time. And also, if an Aries gets into a situation where they can never ever do their own thing, or people around them aren't comfortable with them sort of doing their own thing, it'll be really uncomfortable for them. They need to be able to kind of like be impulsive and act on their instincts or their immediate impulse of, I want to do this now. And if they can't do that, it'll sort of like stifle them, and they'll get frustrated.
Right. And because Mars is the ruling planet, which Mars is the most kind of aggressive, violent planet, I'm not saying all that will turn an Aries.
Don't take this as an excuse to be violent,
an a-hole. Don't
be an Aries hole.
Don't be an Aries hole. That's a good one. But if you think about it, with it being, remember how we mentioned in the Libra video, since the original primordial birth chart, we said that it's Aries is the first house. So there's always going to be that first house energy, and the first house really represents oneself. So that's why you're going to see a lot of the self or the me energy surrounding Aries, just like Jack said. And something, as you were talking, when you were talking about being like the one or themselves, or kind of lonely at the top, you know, I wonder, I'm sure nothing's really a coincidence when you're looking more into astrology, but the number for Aries, when we have 12 signs in the zodiac, and Aries is represented by the number
1.
So again, no coincidences. These people are just confident, natural born leaders. They're at the top typically. Of course, it does depend on the rest of your chart, but you have that ability. So this is where, again, just learning more about yourself with this Aries energy, you can use this to your advantage in life. So when you're a leader, I think, the first person that comes to mind for me for Aries is Michael Jordan. And I'm sure a lot of people, well, of course, he's very famous and recognizable, but
I want to be like Mike.
Exactly. And there's reasons for that. And, I'm from the Chicago area, so I was always just kind of I was a kid in the 90s. So Michael Jordan was always like this hero, and I never really paid attention. I still don't really pay attention to the NBA. So I always knew he was like incredible and amazing and great. But then actually watching that, when you and I watched that Bulls documentary, The Save the Last Dance, which really, really like went into kind of about the Bulls as a team, but of course focused a lot on Michael Jordan as a leader. And I think what I took away from that, that I didn't really know, is not only was Michael Jordan such an incredible player, he was an incredible leader. He became one when he learned how to become one. And that's something that can be a really good tip for Aries, is that in the beginning, like I think, and I'm not an expert on Michael Jordan or basketball, but I think especially in the beginning, a lot of the information that you'll find about him is like, he did these tens of thousands of repetitions to become the best possible version of himself that he can be, that he can be. And that is really, really natural for Aries. But then there was a point in his journey when he was on that team where he had to kind of figure out how to not just try to take the ball to do it himself, because he could. As an Aries, you can get to that level in whatever it is that you want to do. You can get to that level where you can just take the ball and do it yourself and finish the whole game and score all
be the
the
champion.
points.
You can be the champion. But that really pinnacle state of personal growth that he achieved was to be able to then embrace the leadership completely.
And what that
which includes other people.
And so he became an inspiration to not only the people on his team, but he's still an inspiration to this day, if you think about it.
Yeah, a lot of people are obsessed with him.
Yeah, and this is what separates, I think, Michael Jordan as an Aries, is he really embraced that leadership quality. So whatever he expected out of himself, he expected out of his teammates, and he would push them to be better. And they would listen to him because they respected him. And he didn't come from a place of, I'm just going to tell you what to do, but I don't do any of that. Yeah. Everything he told them to do, he was doing.
He was already doing.
And he would never ask anyone to do what he wouldn't do himself. So anyway, I just, that's what I think of when I think of a really positive manifestation of an Aries person.
Yeah. And that also brings up another really interesting coincidence or not coincidence related to Aries, which is that, what do people call Michael Jordan? They call him the GOAT.
Yes.
And Aries, the Sanskrit word for Aries is mesha, which means goat or ram. So the sign of Aries is the goat sign. So you can be the goat in whatever it is. Again,
remember, no such thing as coincidences when it comes to astrology. It's really incredible. So, you know, with an Aries person being that really pioneering. So Aries is the most pioneering sign of the zodiac. Like we talked about, the first to do something, you know, the first to invent something or make something better. You know, that's a lot of pressure and stress. And the thing that you want to recognize is you want to be resilient, because with any sort of new venture or trying something new or trying to be the best, there's going to be some rejection. There's going to be, you know, some negative moments.
And I have a story of a famous Aries ascendant who demonstrates this point really well.
Yeah.
Charles Bukowski, who's a famous writer, famous for writing things that were really sort of transgressive and out of the box for his time. When he was very young, I think in his 20s, he wanted to be a writer really intensely. He wanted to become a great writer, and he put a lot of effort into it. And I don't know all of the details of the story, but I remember seeing his birth chart and seeing this and being like, oh my God, wow, this is such an Aries thing. So when he was in his 20s, I think, he tried to approach people to get published or something like that, and he was rejected. And the rejection of that, because Aries wants to become great, and it can manifest in a way that is bad or has a negative effect on their relationships with other people, but it can also be healthy and benefit other people too. But when it comes down to it, Aries wants to become great. They have this impulse to try to become great, and when he tried to do that early on and he couldn't, it was so unbearable. Like, it was like he couldn't even stand being alive because of this experience of being rejected. And so I think he already struggled with alcohol, but I think he went really hard into the alcohol at that point, and he struggled with alcohol his whole life. But he kind of went on a downward spiral, and it was like 10 years later, in his mid-30s, something happened. I think he used to go out and get into fights on purpose, or just end up in fights where he would get beaten and he would have to lay in a hotel room for like 2 days to recover. And this happened once in such a bad way that it sort of shook something loose in his psyche, and he decided, okay, I'm now going to start writing every single night of my life until I become great. And I think he started somewhere in like his mid-30s, and he dedicated himself, and he would drink while he was doing it. There's other positions. There are other positions where you can see alcoholism in a chart. I don't think it's necessarily connected to Aries.
That's how we say it. There's so many things to take into consideration when you're talking about an individual.
Yeah,
but
of course. But he would every single night write for hours into the early hours of the morning and then get up, and I think he had to work a job at the post office. And he didn't get successful until he was in his early 50s. But then he became massively, massively successful for the rest of his life until he died. So
yeah. So, I mean, really, if you think about it, most people have an aspiration of being great in some way. And I think the biggest hurdle to achieving that is it's not easy, right?
Yeah.
It is hard. You're going to have rejection. You're going to have downfalls. And that's enough to get, I think, a large percentage of the people who try something to just quit, give up. And this isn't a judgment. It's hard. Things come up in life, and it makes it really challenging. So as an Aries, push through that rejection, be resilient, and you will become great.
But that's where Mars can really help, because Mars is about smashing through things. And especially with the symbolism of the ram with Aries, I mean, it's just put your head down and keep going. Just be careful not to hurt anyone with that sort of behavior.
Yeah, that's why I think...
Or yourself.
Yeah. That's why I think another good tip for an Aries person, because of all these traits and qualities, it's really important that they practice self-awareness. I think that it's fair to say everyone should practice self-awareness, but when someone like an Aries has a tendency to, have these desires to be really great, or they're very confident and they're a leader, but it could also manifest slightly as, a large ego, or there could be some selfishness,
or unable to stay in one place. That's where we can maybe talk about the movable nature of the sign.
So
because Aries wants to keep going,
yeah,
and it wants to keep moving, and so if Aries gets into a situation where it feels held back at all, which can be amplified by this sort of self-identity of like, I need to be successful, Aries will just move on, or just like cut off a relationship, or just cut off anything and just keep going. But later on in life, that can end up being something that is a regret, or being something that is like, oh, well, if I just calm down a little bit and realize that if I grow roots a little bit, sometimes it's okay, and I don't have to be so afraid of growing roots or being in a more fixed position. Because sometimes if you, it's like a rolling stone gathers no moss. That's like a really cheesy old saying, but basically if you're trying to become great, you might need to gather moss at some point, and so you might need to get more comfortable with being in one spot and sort of accumulating your gains rather than giving them up every few years and moving on.
And I think just my favorite thing as I learn more about astrology is I just find, how can this help me in my life be better? And same thing when we're advising others with astrology. How can the things we see in your chart, how can it help you lead a better, healthier, happier life? So that's why this self-awareness for an Aries, it's extra important, because they have some tendencies that can turn negative. So, but if you can be aware, practice that reflection and just say, hey, okay, it seems like maybe I'm starting to have some of those negative connotations come out. Let me dial it back a little bit. It doesn't mean you stop moving and you stop being great. You just got to remember, like,
how to balance
it. There's other people in your life that I'm sure you want in your life, so you don't want to just kind of piss them off. I don't know if piss them off.
Yeah.
Make them mad.
You don't want to piss them off or hurt someone accidentally, or it's really with Aries, I think you could almost imagine yourself sometimes as like this, like you're like a cactus with like spikes coming off of you in every direction, and you can accidentally prick people that you don't want to prick.
Yeah.
And you can accidentally leave behind things that maybe you shouldn't have left behind.
Yeah, and because you are that natural born leader and you're more than likely in a leadership position as an Aries, what kind of leader do you want to be? Like, do you want to be the type of leader where you're really inspiring and motivating to others, or maybe the type of leader where everyone just kind of hates you and fears you but does what you say?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I think you could get further with the former rather than the latter.
Yeah. And all that requires is maybe a little bit of like
Reflection.
calming down, reflection.
Just dial it down a little
Yeah.
bit, Aries. But there are ways to help with that because,
Yeah.
again, these are natural things that are in your chart and making you kind of feel really high energy.
Yeah.
So,
Aries can definitely, more than any other sign, benefit from intense physical exercise. That could be hiking, that could be working out, that could be lifting weights, that can be martial arts. All these things can be related to the sign of Aries. The first house of the birth chart is going to be about yourself, your physical body, and also your being active. And so Aries relates to that. And so you just getting that aggression into something, channelizing it into something that then ultimately benefits you because your health improves, your physical body improves by doing that.
You know, every time we kind of re-go over some of these tips, it's so interesting because I think this is advice that
anyone
could use in life. You could hear it from, you know, a motivational speaker, from a friend, a family member, a therapist, but that's how real astrology is because this is actually coming from the actual classical texts that is in there. So that's how perfectly like astrology can help you in life, and it kind of just emphasizes the truth that's there.
Yeah, astrology was the original self-help.
Yeah.
That's what it's for, because a lot of times there's this confusion, and it can really confuse people sometimes a little bit, and it's understandable. But when people first start studying astrology, especially Vedic astrology, it's like a way of reading your karma from previous lifetimes and understanding what might be likely to be the case in this life, whether that's your personality or things that are going to happen. And it can immediately become this fatalistic thing of like, oh, well, everything in my life is predestined now, and I'm just going to look at my chart and sort of stir up all this neuroticism about like, well, when is this bad thing going to happen? When's this bad thing going to happen? Am I cursed? Is this, you know? And there are some things that you can see in your chart that might be very difficult to change or maybe hard things that you have to deal with, but there's always positives as well. And the real reason that astrology exists isn't just for you to understand some fatalistic picture of what the rest of your life is going to be. It's to understand it in order to be able to do something about it. Mm-hmm. And some things are more changeable than others, and that's kind of a complex subject, but it's really to be able to do something about that maybe personality defect or fix this personality issue that's causing you problems and be more self-aware of it, or take this positive thing and capitalize on that positive thing and get the best out of it. So it's really to give you more power rather than to take it away.
Yeah, I think saying it's kind of the original self-help is perfect, is putting it perfectly. And as you continue to watch our videos and learn with us, you will see that that's exactly what it is. So Aries, gotta channel that energy and it'll help you become more successful. It'll help you avoid some of that negative, maybe like
discharging energy. It's like there's energy, and you don't have to judge that energy or say it's bad or good. There's like a buildup of intensity.
Yeah. And
it wants to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And sometimes if it stagnates, well, it's just gonna be like static electricity, and it's just going to zap whatever the closest thing is, and that means you just blew up at someone who didn't deserve it or something. So
and get to the gym, Aries. Just get on over there.
And Mars naturally signifies martial arts and
working
things like that.
And,
so So the 10th house of the birth chart of an Aries is going to be Capricorn, and that means that the 10th house of their chart, or the house of their chart related to career and their path in life, their karmic path in life, is ruled by Saturn. And because it's ruled by Saturn, that can mean that Saturn signifies things that are slow, things that take a long time to give results. things where you have to be patient and there's literally no other way to get what you want besides to just wait. And not just wait while doing nothing. You have to keep going with your activities, but you won't get the thing until you get to this certain amount of time that has passed. And so because Saturn puts those significations on the career of an Aries, especially with the Aries personality, which can be kind of impatient and want it all now and want to be successful right now, Aries has to learn to wait a little bit with their career and exercise discipline and patience in their career path to really get to as far as they want to get.
Yeah, and I think anyone who can truly understand their own weaknesses, they can turn those weaknesses into either a strength or they can just find a way to combat them so that they themselves can just get better. And this is going to be kind of hard for an Aries to hear some of these things, like you got to be patient and you got to maybe rein it in a little bit. Like that's hard, but if you can truly like master or at least understand your weaknesses, understand them, and then find ways, of course, to kind of, use those, I guess, strengthen those weaknesses is really the best way to say it.
Yeah.
But
and you're naturally good at that.
Yeah. And this is extra hard for Aries because an Aries doesn't want to ever be viewed as someone with a weakness. But every single person has some sort of weakness. And this is a really hard concept for Aries, but you just got to continue to practice that reflection, self-improvement, understand that it's normal to have a weakness, and just because you are so, motivated, just get past those weaknesses, make yourself stronger and better.
And one of the things that one of the classical texts on Vedic astrology, Paladipika, states about Aries, I think it uses the phrase specifically, treats weaknesses like diseases.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so in the life of this can be very positive because you can it's like you'll find the weakness in yourself and surgically remove it because you don't want to be weak. Like it's scary for an Aries to feel scared or to feel weak. And so you can become incredibly strong that way, but that can become a weakness, not only because you sort of are afraid of ever being vulnerable in any way, which is fine, but you can sometimes, if this manifests in an unhealthy way, you can see weakness in other people as disgusting. And so if someone's weak, it's like, if someone's weak, they kind of need help, or they need your leadership, or they need your inspiration, or they need something from you. But they don't need you to be disgusted with them. And that can happen for an Aries. They see weakness and it's like, oh my God, like, it's almost like they see weakness, they see prey, or they think they're going to get infected with it. Like it's contagious and they want to get away from it. So try to overcome that and try to allow yourself to be human and also allow other people around you to be human so that you can help them.
Yeah, and another like weakness that I think is pretty typical of Aries is they struggle with emotions. I think they're definitely more action-based, and they might actually feel very uncomfortable, kind of like you said, they don't like to be vulnerable, so when there's a lot of emotions in a situation, they might be disgusted by that, discomforted, but look, unless you want to be kind of alone the rest of your life with no friends or family or, relationship, you're going to have to deal, and of course your own emotions too, they're part of life. So it's not comfortable, but it is a slight weakness that I think it's just good for an Aries person to be aware. Mm-hmm. It's because they perceive any sort of emotion as a weakness, especially ones that are like sad, lonely, scared, anxious, like those kind of down feeling emotions. An Aries would be like, oh, that's just weak. I never feel sad or lonely. But That's not true. So be honest with yourself and recognize that emotions are a part of life, and it doesn't make someone weak to feel emotions. What makes you weak is if you kind of just let them go unchecked, I would say.
Yeah, if you let them rule your life and you sort of like stew in them or ruminate in them for too long. But Aries really doesn't have to worry about that, so
No, they just have...
It's not going to be a problem. That'll be a different sign that we'll have to tell not to get too into their emotions.
No, they just have to recognize that it's okay.
That
it's okay to have emotions.
To have one
it's okay for other
every
people.
Few months or something.
Yeah. So another thing about Aries, and again, every amazing, all the good things about a sign come with some of these things. So you got to find some balance with your impulsiveness and your temper. So not all Aries and not all the time, but it can, depending on some other planets that are, influencing your chart. Aries tend to have a little bit of a temper, and be a little impulsive with that temper, which, and I think that kind of relates to the fire sign that is very strong in Aries. It's fiery. And Mars.
Yeah.
It's fiery. And that can be awesome, but it can also alienate people. So be aware. Again, it's just another thing to be aware of.
Yeah, a perfect example of this, to get a picture in your mind of what this looks like. Joe Pesci is a famous Aries ascendant. And he is very famous for that role in Goodfellas, where...
Oh, yeah. That's a great one.
So, and all of his roles are like this, too. You'll find that it's not always the case, especially with, like, people that have more of a Mercury influence, like Mercury ruled ascendants. But with a lot of people, actors, you can see their natural astrological personality playing out in the roles that they play. And in all of the roles that Joe Pesci plays, it's always the same. And it's like this, he like gets mad about something
real easily,
and then he flips out and starts beating someone with a phone or something, or
very impulsive.
Impulsive.
And it typically
impulse control problem.
Because it typically leads to a bigger problem
later on.
So don't allow that to happen to you.
But the impulse for Aries, if we take it outside of the context of having a temper, it can be some of the best things that you do, or the most successful things that happen in your life can be because of your acting on an impulse. So there's kind of an art to really understanding your own... It's like, I think there's a statement in the Bhagavad Gita somewhere that says that the mind can either be your best friend or your worst enemy. And that's whether or not you are in a good relationship with it, where you're in control. And so if your impulses are controlling you as an Aries, then it can lead to some negative outcomes. But if you learn to know when there's a kind of a good impulse to act on, and how to mitigate the potential negative side of it, like, okay, is this gonna hurt anyone, or is this gonna cause me any trouble down the line, or am I blowing up, or is this more of an emotional thing, or is this a really, really intuitive impulse that is something that I should act on? Because those intuitive impulses can be some of the best things, some of the best outcomes, especially in your career or things like that.
For sure. Impulse doesn't necessarily mean something negative. It's just, what are your tendencies, your individual tendencies? How do you handle impulsiveness? And an Aries can definitely be impulsive in a really positive way or in a negative way. So just be aware. I think it's really important for an Aries to just kind of have some tools in their tool belt if they're starting to feel that buildup of a negative frustration associated with impulsiveness, or in any of the things we've talked about. And I think because Aries like to move and they like to kind of exercise, and it's not always possible to just run to the gym really quick or do like a workout to kind of get out that angst. It might be best to kind of just take a little walk. That way you're at least moving. You can start to like think, getting a little bit of that physical, that little physical movement. And
your Lagna Lord, Mars, it's favorite house to be in is the third house. And that doesn't mean necessarily that you have Mars in the third house or anything like that. But because Mars' favorite place to be is the third house, which relates to short distance travels, going for a walk is a very sort of Mars thing to do that can kind of help you think and help you reflect on your impulses and figure out which ones are the best, and also calm down a little bit.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, which kind of, it ties into a few things we said, because Aries, you are destined for greatness and you're always looking to do the next great thing. But then there's a little bit of that impatience aspect there. It's really important to kind of take a moment and maybe, celebrate those small wins, the little victories. I think this is really key for everybody and anybody, but some people have a tendency to get more frustrated than others. So for an Aries person, instead of thinking, okay, I'm not the lead player on my team right now. Okay, well, what did go well today? What did you achieve? How did you improve? So you got to just find things to constantly feel victorious about, because I think Aries they want to win. They want to win. They want to win.
And that's good. That's good for you.
Yeah, so if you haven't reached that really, really big win because it takes a lot of time, I'm sure you did have some smaller wins in the day, and don't ignore those smaller wins.
Yeah, you probably have a lot of accomplishments already, and it can be something that can help a little bit just to remember that you did accomplish this and this and this and this and this, and you're gonna get to that next thing. But if you minimize all those other things because they're not the golden
if you overlook
top trophy at the end of the rainbow, then you can end up kind of almost losing them by minimizing them.
Yeah, and overlooking them, it's gonna kind of stir up more of that frustration that you're trying to kind of get more of a handle on.
Yeah.
Lastly, it looks like Jack kind of prepared for this tip. I don't know if you did it on purpose.
Yeah, it wasn't on purpose for Libra, but yes, red is a very lucky color for Aries. So if you're Aries, ascendant, moon, sun, or cluster of planets in Aries, or you're going through a time period of a planet in Aries, red can be a really good color for you because red is Mars, and Mars is one of the best planets for an Aries ascendant.
Yep. And again, back to that fire energy, red is a fire color. There's a lot of passion and fire that is inside of an Aries and intensity. So the red can help ignite and inspire and motivate an Aries person. And Tuesday is actually the day of Mars. It's Mars's day. So even if you want to be really simplistic about it, on a Tuesday, wear
red on Tuesday.
Wear red on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot. It's a lot for you to take in.
I think that's a lot of tips. We could probably talk for a long time about this, but maybe we'll make some more videos in the future.
Yeah. So, if you're new, please subscribe to our channel. Give us a like. Send us a comment. We'd love to hear what you think.
And don't forget to visit our website, atmaoccult.com, where you can find all of our books, consultations, articles, and also our free birth chart calculator in case you don't know what your sign is and you want to figure it out.